Okay, in this video we're going to learn about slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b, where m stands for slope and b stands for y-intercept. When an equation is already in slope-intercept form, you can read it like a sentence. The number with the x is the slope, and the number by itself is the y-intercept. Let's practice some. So in the first problem, it says write the slope and y-intercept of each question. The slope of the first one is -5, because -5 is with the x. And the y-intercept Okay, if you haven't done number 3 or 4 yet, go ahead and do them now. The slope of number 3 would be -2, and the y-intercept would be -4. In number 4, the slope would be 8, and the y-intercept would be, it's +1. If you got those correct, go ahead and keep working. If not, follow along with the video. In number 5, the slope is 5, and the y-intercept is -3. In number 6, the slope is -3, and the y-intercept is -9. Again, the slope is always the one beside the x, and the y-intercept is the constant. Okay, if you have not done 7 through 12 yet, go ahead and do them by yourself, and then I will show you the answers, and you can see whether you got them right or wrong. Alright, the answers are on the screen. Notice they wrote out slope, and they wrote out y-intercept. But we could have written m for slope, and b for y-intercept, and that's fine. If you did not get these right, raise your hand and ask for help. Okay, in the second part of the video, we are going to be given the slope and the y-intercept, and we're going to write it in an equation format. So don't forget that the equation is always going to be y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. So in the first problem, it says the slope is -3 and the y-intercept is +4. So we're going to write y equals, and the slope is -3, so that's going to go here, and the y-intercept is +4, so that would go there. So this is the final answer, y equals -3x plus 4. Let's try the next one. It says y equals, then we have our slope, -1, x, plus the y-intercept, which is 0. Now normally they don't write the 0. Normally that would just get dropped off, because +0 doesn't change anything. But you can write it, it doesn't matter. We'll write it both ways. Both of those are fine. Number 3, go ahead and try 3 and 4, and then play the video and see if you got them correct. Notice that in number 3, the y-intercept is negative. So the equation is y equals 1/5 x minus 5, or you could have written it y equals 1/5 x plus -5, and that would have been fine. Both of those are the same thing. Most people just write -5, but if you want to write plus -5, then there's nothing wrong with that. Number 4 is y equals 2x, and I'm just going to go ahead and write -9. But again, you could have written y equals 2x plus -9. Try 5 and 6 and see if you get them correct. Okay, for number 5, you should have got y equals -8x plus 8. And for number 6, you should have got y equals -4x minus 7/2. So hopefully this is making sense. What you're doing in every problem is taking the slope and plugging it in for m, and taking the y-intercept and plugging it in for b. Okay, 7 through 12 we haven't done yet, so I want you to go ahead and try to do them by yourself. And then when you think you have them done and correct, play the video and check yourself. Alright, I'm going to display the answers, so if you're not ready yet, go ahead and hit pause. Alright, the answers are on the screen, and notice that part B, 1 and 2 were written a little differently, but they're really telling you the exact same information. Let's take a minute and look at them. It says if a line cuts the y-axis, well, that would be the y-intercept at -6, so that's the y-intercept. And the slope is -10, and that would be your slope. Then find the equation of the line. So they just took the numbers and they plugged them in into the appropriate spot for y equals mx plus b. Number 2 says find the equation of a tangent. A tangent is a line that hits, like if there were a circle here, and a tangent would come right on the edge of it. Find the equation of a tangent whose slope is 3 and has a y-intercept of 1. So that would be y equals 3x plus 1. Alright, so we know how to find the slope of a line, and we know how to read the slope-intercept form. So what we're going to do now is put those two pieces of knowledge together and graph a line from an equation. So let's give ourselves an example, and we'll work it out, and then we'll take some notes. So looking at number 1, it says the slope is -7/6. So let's remind ourselves of some things. So the slope is -7/6. The fact that it's a negative means it's going to go downhill like this. And it's going to fall 7 and run 6. So we're going to fall 7 and run 6. That's what our slope will look like. And if we look here, it says the y-intercept is -1. So what that means is that it's going to cross over the y-axis at -1. So the vertical line right here, this is the y-axis. And this particular line crosses over at -1. So there's going to be a point right here. That's where the line is going to cross over. So let's go ahead and graph that point. So at -1, we're going to put our point. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to use the slope, and we're going to graph the next point. So don't forget, we're going to fall 7 and run 6, or we can run 6 and fall 7. I think in this case it's going to be easier to run 6 and then fall 7. So let's go over. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we're going to go down 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the other point would be right here. So let's just clarify. We ran 6 and fell 7. Now you're going to take your ruler and you're going to connect those 2 points. And I know my line is not straight, but you'll be able to get yours straight because you're going to be using a ruler. Okay, let's go ahead and do number 2 as another example. The first thing you'll notice is that the slope is a whole number, -4. Well, we're used to seeing fractions, so we need to write it as a fraction. So the slope is -4, and to write a whole number as a fraction, you just put it over 1. So the slope of this equation is -4 over 1, which means that we're going to fall 4 and run 1. And the y-intercept was 7. So that means it's going to cross over the y-axis at 7. So we're going to put, it's going to cross over the y-axis at 7. So that's our first point. And to create a line, we only need 2 points. So I have one of them already. I just need one more. If you remember, we wrote down, we're going to run 1 and fall 4. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to run 1 and fall 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So my other point will be right here. And I know that my drawing is a little bit hard to read. So let's make a triangle instead. So I ran 1 and fell 4. Now I'm going to connect my dots. And again, your line is going to be better than mine. So now that we've done a couple, let's write some notes. Step 1 is to plot the first point on the y-axis. And after you plot that point, you're going to start from that point and use the slope to find the second point. So step 2. So to recap, step 1 is to plot the first point on the y-axis. Step 2 is to start from that point, use the slope, and find the second point. Step 3 would be to connect those points using a straight line. Okay, so go ahead and write these down, and then I want you to practice graphing the rest of the page, and then let me look at it. But before we go, let's go ahead and do a couple more together, just in case you have any questions. And if you still can't figure it out after these, then raise your hand and ask for help. So let's just do 2 more. We'll do 3 and we'll do 6. 3 says the slope is 5/7. So it's positive, so we're going to be rising. So we're going to rise 5 and run 7. But we're going to start with the y-intercept of -6. So our first point is going to be at -6. And then we're going to rise 5 and run 7. I like to run first, so let's do that. So we're going to run 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we ran 7. Now we rise 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that is my second point. I'm going to connect those dots, and there's my line. Okay, on number 6, it says the slope is -1, which is a whole number, but it's a negative, so we're going to fall. And to make a whole number a fraction, you just put it over 1. So the slope is actually going to be -1 over 1. And the y-intercept is -3. -3, I'm going to put a dot, and then I'm going to run 1 and fall 1. So I have a dot right here. It's very close together. Then I connect my dots. Well, let me try again. And there's my line. Go ahead and try the rest by yourself, and raise your hand if you have any questions.